All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are doing a preview and prediction for number 4 Penn State traveling on the road to take on USC. 5.5-point favorites in favor of the Nittany Lions. 47.5 is the total. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS, live from the Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. Looking at the Penn State offense, under Emmy Kolanecki, new offensive coordinator from Kansas, he's been doing an admirable job with this unit. In week 1 against West Virginia, they were highly impressive. They had balance. Aller was putting on a clinic. Since then, though, hasn't been all that impressive. They kind of struggled despite also having balance against Bowling Green. Kent State, who cares? Illinois is a very good defense. They were able to run the ball well in that one. But here against UCLA, worst performance of the year. 27-point favorites at home, and that's exactly how many points they put up, beating them 27-11. Couldn't run the ball. 85 yards of offense, only 322 total. You start with Drew Aller. Even though the unit doesn't seem to be progressing right now, they're kind of stuck in the mud. Aller, I think, has been better than last year. He seems to be playing with a little bit more sense of urgency. Has been making some really good throws, much better ones downfield. This is a team I think can really hurt you in terms of yards after catch. I've seen Aller make some incredible throws this year, Nick, so this is a guy that certainly is getting better. They still don't seem to have the biggest, threat in terms of speed. Harrison Wallace looked very good week 1. He's been, a consistent performer, but not the greatest production since. Tyler Warren at tight end is one of the best in the country. He's a guy that's going to get a lot of targets across the middle of the field. Amari Evans, third leading pass catcher at 220 yards. Julian Fleming, he doesn't even have 100 yet. He's been very quiet so far this season. And then you have Liam Clifford, who ended up being the leading pass catcher against UCLA. In all due respect intended, Nick, when he's your leading pass catcher, you got some issues. So what do you make of this Penn State offense so far that looked good early, but seems to, again, be kind of stuck in the track so far when it comes to progression?
They have been kind of stuck in the tracks. We haven't seen them fully take over to the level that we had hoped they would. Drew Aller's been a good quarterback, but he's not hit the elite heights that many people thought he could be coming out of high school. I think he's a good quarterback, right? 70% comp rate, 1,100 yards passing, 9 touchdowns and 1 pick. He's been solid, has 3 rushing touchdowns as well, but he hasn't quite reached those levels that you would hope to see it on. This offense has not taken that full step forward that you thought you might see at some point. 244 passing yards per game is the average, 2.4 touchdowns per game. Not bad, but not great either, right? You still haven't hit that, high levels that you were hoping to see out of this offense. It certainly helps when you have a nice running back duo that we'll talk about, but this is an offense that you expected a lot more of. Julian Fleming was supposed to be a big impact player. He barely has 100 yards, doesn't even have 100 yards, has below 10 receptions. He's not gotten a whole lot of targets. Tyler Warren's been a really good player for this offense with 3 touchdowns and 289, but you want to see more to him. Harrison Wallace, you want to see more to him. He has 230 and 2 touchdowns. Amari Evans, Liam Clifford, they need to see more opportunities as well. Nick Singleton, the running back, has gotten 2 receiving touchdowns. He's been a solid player coming out of the backfield. You've seen a little bit more out of him. But in general, this wide receiving room and this tight end room need to be better here. They haven't really lived up to what you would hope. Warren being the highest target receiver, most receptions at tight end, is concerning when you have the talent in this wide receiver room and they're just not being used to their full strength. Definitely concerns about this Penn State offense going forward as they play tougher teams in the thick of Big Ten football.
And you look at the PSU rushing attack, one that's been phenomenal. They have this elite 1-2 punch in Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Singleton didn't play last week, 408 yards and 3 scores, and obviously his presence was significantly missed. Allen, on the other hand, 367 and 2 scores. These guys, for 2 years in a row have had very identical numbers, so this is as close as it gets in terms of production between these two backs. They just couldn't spring much, and you're going up against the USC defense that is heavily improved against the run. I know they've had a problem in terms of giving up explosive plays, but when they're not allowing those, the run defense is playing pretty well. So it's certainly going to be a bit of a mixed bag here, I think, for Penn State, a team that kind of likes to grind it out and occasionally rip off a 20 or 30-yard run. And you look at an offensive line as well, I think it's pretty stout on the interior. They've been certainly better than I thought they would be. Ola Iona at left guard has been stout. Nick Dawkins at center, has been playing that position pretty well. Sal Wormley, a veteran at right guard. So I'm really happy with this interior, Nick, and I'll get to the tackles in a minute. But what do you think that the matchup will be for them in terms of this rushing attack against a run defense that, again, has had problems with big plays, but other than that, at times they can really hold you, to a couple yards at a time, and I think that's not where Penn State wants to be at all.
This is a unit that has to have a good day on the ground against USC. They have to be strong. Singleton's a really incredible back, 408 yards rushing, 7.7 yards per carry, 3 scores. Ketron Allen, 367, 5 yards per carry, and 2 scores for him. I mentioned Allure has 3 rushing touchdowns as well, so certainly you've seen some success on the ground, 217 yards per game so far, 5.4 yards per attempt, and 2.2 touchdowns per game. So they've been able to run the ball effectively. They're a really solid unit. The offensive line has some key pieces that have been solid so far this season after replacing some key pieces that went to the NFL draft. I've been happy with this Penn State rushing attack. They got to be strong here, right? They got to have a successful day against USC on the road. They got to be able to run the ball, ground and pound, and relieve some pressure on that wide receiving core that has not been phenomenal. And the USC secondary has shown some strength at times so far this season. Got to see a strong rushing performance from Penn State if they want to win this game.
And I waited to talk about the tackles because I think this is an area where they can potentially get exposed. They certainly did well against Illinois, who has some great pass rushers. At the left tackle spot, Drew Shelton. These guys haven't given up a sack either, but he's not been a great run blocker. I think he's a guy that probably isn't all that stout in pass protection either. Anthony Doka, for example, is having a better season, I would say, his right tackle spot. Probably not all that confident, though, in his abilities. I think these guys will be better as the season goes on, but the interior is certainly outperforming the edges so far in this offensive line, going up against the USC defense that hasn't really shown much of a pass rush, but they do have some guys who can make plays on the boundary. And that's the biggest reason why this Penn State offense has not been all that good the last couple of years, is because of the offensive line. And they have heavily recruited this area, so I think, as longer term and, over the next couple of years, they'll certainly improve because they have a lot of talent here sitting in the reserves and waiting. But I think so far, Nick, these tackles might be, a little iffy coming into a contest like this.
I think Drew Shelton's been definitely iffy at times on that left side, while Doka has been also concerning at right tackle. Sal Wormley has been really good in the interior, as has Nick Dawkins. I've been happy with the interior of this offensive line. They got to be strong here. This is a tough matchup on the road. Could get a little rattled. Got to avoid penalties. I know the Coliseum is not the toughest road environment. Got to be smart, though. Got to be vigilant. Got to avoid penalties. No false starts. Nothing stupid like that. Got to be confident here. They struggled at times against Illinois. The offensive line did. They got to have a good day here against the Trojans.
Now you look at a USC offense, a unit that is putting up 31 points per game so far this season, coming off a disappointing effort against Minnesota, where things really seemed clicking at times and they had nice balance, but they just shot themselves in the foot too many times. They had that fumble in plus territory right before half. They had 2 interceptions, one where Moss was just trying to make a play at the end of the game, and then one was on a crucial third down where he got hit off the right side by an edge rusher, resulting in an interception. Just very disappointing because they haven't been able to keep their foot on the gas, it seems. They've been very good in the second half, though, I would say. Even though, things, again, got away from them against the Golden Gophers. At Michigan, though, a very resilient effort. He had almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'd say Moss is having a great year. 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, all coming across the last 3 games as they've entered conference play. This is a great group of receivers, though. Early on in the game, Zachariah Branch, wide open, first down, big play. Ball hits him in the face mask. So, it's just silly stuff that's really held this team back, Nick, and you hate to see it. I think a lot of people, SC faithful and people across the country are kind of overreacting to this SC team, Nick, because they really just did it to themselves. Branch, though, 21 receptions. That's tied with Jacoby Lane for this team high, 220-plus yards each. Lane has found the end zone 4 times. Kyron Hudson has been a guy with, electric hands for them throughout the year. Deuce Robinson, Woody Marks, the running back, is a guy that has a reception in like 50 straight games. Mekhi Lemon as well. You're going to check his status in this game. But this is a deep receiving group, a nice passing attack, Nick. If they can get out of their own way, they can be deadly.
They can certainly be deadly to get out of their own way. There's been a lot of hate on this USC team so far this season. And when they have 2 losses, that's certainly disappointing. But this is still a team that has had some strong offensive performances. And, they put up 48 points on Utah State, 38 points on Wisconsin in a win. So this is an offense that can score points, put up 27 points on LSU, that is, in the opener. So they have some success. Miller Moss, I think he's been as advertised, in my opinion. Yes, some of the turnovers are concerned. 4 picks, you'd like to cut that down a little bit. 200 throws so far this season, 64% on those 200 throws. 1,400 yards passing, 9 touchdowns. I've been happy with him. I think he's looked comfortable, looked confident. He's been really solid. Like I said, as advertised, this team has been really solid through the air. Nearly 300 yards per game through the air is a solid number. Jacoby Lane, Zachariah Branch have been really good. Branch, got to find a way to get him in the end zone. Certainly need to give him some more targets in the red zone. Lane has those 4 touchdowns, solid numbers. Deuce Robinson, 3 touchdowns, 147 for him. Kyron Ware-Hudson, 226 for him as well. Need to find a way to get him in the end zone as well. He has been involved in that. Woody Marks has been really solid out of the backfield, a good threat option. Kyle Ford, Lake McRae has not been bad either. I still think this is a really solid in terms of receiving core, and it's still a really solid unit. Yes, the offense has struggled a little bit at times. They struggled against Michigan. They struggled against Minnesota in losses, but I still am very confident in this unit. This is a big get right game, big bounce back opportunity at home to beat a really top top team at home in Penn State and have a good showing from your strong wide receivers.
And this run game was phenomenal against Wisconsin. Obviously, this is a bit of a complex scheme in terms of defending the run with their counter runs and how they pull guards, wide alignments, slow developing run plays, and really seem to hurt opposing defenses. Against Michigan, they ripped off a big run. Some sacks led to that number being lower. Against LSU, the number was low as well. But it's been a complimentary rushing attack, much better than it was a season ago. Woody Marks having a great year. Quentin Joyner had a bad fumble there, but he's putting up over 7 yards per carry. Back to Marks, though, 468 and 4 scores. Obviously, he has prowess as a receiving back as well. What do you make of this rushing attack, Nick? Because against Penn State, it's hard to run the ball. This is a brick wall you're going up against, but with Lincoln Riley and his creativity, this is not something they give up on. He likes to run the football, and he does it very well at times just due to play calling.
I think this is a running back room that's been good at times this season. I think it's a nice little duo there with Marks and Joyner that have been solid. I think Lincoln Riley needs to avoid staying away from running the ball. He needs to continue to run the ball and use it as an option because it's been good. Marks, 4 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per carry. Also 19 receptions out of the backfield, which has been really solid. Joyner, 212 yards rushing, 7.9 and 2 scores. The 468 for Marks is a really solid number. Joyner has a few grabs as well. I think it works, right? You can run the ball. You can have some success with that. I think Lincoln Riley this year, the entire year for USC, going into this season, Lincoln Riley was going to change some things on his offense and his defense, running the ball a little bit more. It was certainly part of that. 150 yards per game on the ground, I think, is a good number. 5.1 yards per carry and 1.8 scores per game, I think, is solid, right? This is a unit that's showing improvement and getting better as time goes on. They could have a solid day here, and that would certainly help out this offense, relieve some pressure on Miller Moss.
And now I criticize the tackles for Penn State, but USC's probably got the worst tackle duo in the conference, quite frankly. Elijah Page, Mason Murphy, these guys have been no good in any regard, especially in pass protection. Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard's been very good. Jonah Monheim seems to be getting better in his transition to center. And then at right guard, Lonnie Noah is also a bit of a liability. This offensive line has just been no good for USC, Nick, and they probably would have beat Michigan. I know their PFF grade was a 0. That's how bad they were, and they lost the game by 3 points. That's an elite D-line they faced. Guess what? The Nittany Lions are just as good, just as athletic. Probably not as, nasty in the interior, but they have a lot of depth and a lot of size there. So, this is a phenomenal D-line, one of the best you're going to face. Seems like a mismatch for this O-line, but again, when you talk about Lincoln Riley, he's going to find ways to be innovative. They've got players capable of being used in a versatile role, including Zachariah Branch. You're going to look to get the football out quickly, utilize the speed they do have on this roster out wide on quick screens and whatnot. So I think USC is going to do a good job of offsetting it, Nick. It'll be an interesting chess match between him and Tom Allen. But if they're just trying to do straight drop-back passing with no run game, they're going to get mauled.
I think they have to run the ball. They have to have success on the ground. The offensive line was horrible against Michigan, like you said. Page and Murphy have been horrible this season. The interior has been a little bit better. I think there's some successful opportunities. I think Jonah Monheim has been really good at center. I've been pleased with him. The interior is not bad, but the tackles are terrible. They got to be strong here against this Penn State defensive line that seems to continue to turn out top-level prospects year after year. Tom Allen's a really great defensive coordinator who was a good coach in the past. It just kind of got stale for him at his previous job. I think he's a really strong defensive coordinator here that will draw up a big scheme and try and attack it. Moss got to get the ball quickly, got to hit Branch in stride, got to use his speed, let him go out there and torch this defense potentially, let him get some targets, get some nice speed involved. This is going to be a nice chess match between the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators here from the two respective programs as they try to battle it out. I do like what USC has on offense. I think if they can run the ball, stick to the script, they can find themselves having some success here against this Penn State defense.
Now you look at that Nittany Lion defense, and you start with 2 phenomenal edge rushers that are probably going to give these guys a headache. Danny Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter. Carter making that transition down the edge. He's been great. 8 TFL, 3 sacks, has a forced fumble. He's been tremendous for them. Dennis Sutton, not as much production, but he's still a complete force for them. Zane Durant has 5 TFL. He's just one of many guys that get involved on the interior. I'm in Vanover, Smith, Vilbert, Devon J. Thomas, Keziah Izzard, Hakeem Beeman. They have so many different guys on this defensive line that can get involved. They got great size, a lot of athletic ability. Edge rushing position has always been just a gnarly area for James Franklin and this team, Nick. That's one spot they continue to churn out all kinds of athletes, and I think they're even better than Michigan at the defensive end spot. So you got worked in that game, Nick. Probably going to happen here. It's going to be interesting to see how SC can offset it, but these guys seem in line to eat, but it's not going to be a complete cakewalk. This is college football at the end of the day, but these guys have the opportunity to completely flip this game on its heels, especially if they're maybe trailing or whatnot, cannot take a playoff against these guys.
If you want to find the biggest advantage, potentially, it's going to be this defensive line against this USC offensive line. Abdul Carter, 22 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Zane Durant, 12 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Durant has a pass breakup. Carter has 2 himself. Danny Dennis Sutton, 8 total tackles, 2 sacks for him, 3 pass breakups, plus a fumble recovery and a forced fumble. Josiah Izzard, 5 total tackles. Vanover, 4 total tackles. A great rotational depth all over the place in this team. Carter has been phenomenal, right? You moved him down off the edge, and he's been as advertised, if not better. He's been really strong, a big physical piece. He's going to have a really strong day here. Attack those tackles, win your matchup. I think he can certainly win his battle coming off the edge there. I like what he can do on that right side. I think he has a potential matchup advantage there against Murphy. I like what that looks like. This could be really solid, or not Murphy, potentially flip on the other side against Page. I like what we see here out of this. I think Carter could have a really strong day. He's a big difference maker in this game.
Now you look at the middle of their defense, a unit that was somewhat in flux. They had a couple of different guys that have gotten involved, though, and they've really found the 2 core players here in Tony Rojas and Kobe King. King's been tremendous, especially as a run stopper. Tyler Eldston doesn't play as much nowadays. Neither does Dominic DeLuca, but these guys have been, adamant performers in the past. I think this is a good linebacking core. They're complementary. They're probably not as elite as they've been in the past, Nick, but they certainly aren't any slouch. This is certainly a group that has been kind of inconsistent in terms of tackling. And again, I allude to that complex run scheme that can put you in bad positions because of the wide alignments and some of the patience on those schemes that, allows USC to get blockers in certain areas. And I think if these linebackers aren't disciplined, they can get hurt in that area. So you talk about advantages. That's one maybe SC can look to exploit.
There's certainly an advantage that SC could look to exploit at times. This linebacking core has some solid pieces, but they do look a little shaky occasionally. Tony Rojas, 23 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, an interception, and a pass breakup. Kobe King, I like him a lot. He's looked good in his new role there. 23 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack. Tyler Eldson, 14 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. Dominic DeLuca, 7 total tackles. Both of them are getting reduced roles. It's really been the Rojas and King show as those 2 guys have taken over those positions. Rojas, still a very young player, is a true sophomore. Look to try and exploit him, potentially trying to attack him in the middle there, attack King as well with some of those cutting routes across the middle, some of that speed you have from USC. That could certainly lead to some potential success for those Trojans offense.
You look at a Penn State secondary that's also incredibly coached. They've had a good year. Haven't faced too many tough quarterbacks. I guess Garrett Green's a good player. Not all that accurate, but they can certainly hurt you with explosiveness. The worst game they had all year was against Bowling Green, and they played pretty well against Luke Altmaier and some talented pass catchers. But this is going to be the biggest challenge we'll have faced all year. Kevin Winston Jr., he's still out. He's an elite safety. And obviously, they're very deep at safety, so not the biggest loss. But in major contests like this, maybe it could come back to hurt you at some point. I think Zakee Wheatley and Jalen Reed, who's having a phenomenal year, they're going to do just fine in a game like this. One issue, I think, for them is the corners. Cam Miller, he's having an all right year. He's been a very sound tackler. But in terms of coverage, I think it's been, not all that tested how they'll do out wide on the boundary. Jalen Kimber, their cornerback 1, he's not a special player, Nick. This is his 3rd different destination. And, he's a guy probably going to get exposed. A.J. Harris, on the other hand, has been very good in coverage this year, a former 5-star that also transferred in. And then Elliott Washington, is their 3rd corner, is having a solid season as well. I think this is an area they can look to exploit, though. These corners are, again, Nick, I don't think they're all that special other than Harris. I think he'll eventually maybe even reach elite status here in this program. The other ones, though, not all that confident in. The safety group, love those players and their abilities as versatile playmakers. But again, I think corner might be an area for SC to attack and do it often.
I think it's certainly an opportunity that USC could try to expose that. Reed, 33 total tackles, leading the team there. 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble which he recovered. Wheatley, 23 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, a pick, 2 pass breakups. Harris, I like him at coverage, 16 total tackles, 1 interception, 2 pass breakups. Cam Miller, 12 total tackles plus a sack. Kimber, 9 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. Look to target him. And then Elliott Washington, 4 total tackles, a pick, and 2 pass breakups for him. Definitely a bit of a shaky unit at times. I think that this is going to have to be where they have to try and be strong. Facing a tough quarterback in Miller Moss, who's turned the ball over occasionally, try to get a pick or 2 maybe, and change the field, get some strong field position. Interesting matchup battle going on between that. The secondary's got to stand strong here. They got to be a really good unit here against a really good quarterback that if you give them opportunities to pick you apart, you could certainly pay for it.
Looking at the USC defense, we talked about the run defense. It's clearly an improved unit. Michigan, though, still ran for 290 yards. Really, the bulk of that came off of 3 big-time plays that they had. Minnesota had almost 200 on 40 attempts. Most of that was also kind of some big plays, even though they got grinded down a little bit more in this contest. The run defense is a lot better than it was last year, Nick, because they were giving up 300 yards to everybody, it seemed. Gavin Meyer's been a phenomenal transfer addition from Wyoming. Anthony Lucas has been great off the edge, a little bit quieter off after the last couple weeks, though. Nate Clifton has been a solid addition from Vanderbilt. Braylon Shelby as well off the edge. Jamil Mohammed. I mean, they have good players here. Some of these guys have been quiet. The pass rush hasn't really been clicking. Only 6 sacks this year. This is the defense that's still a work in progress, Nick, because when you were as bad as they were a season ago, that's going to take some time. And so far, they've done a pretty good job, I would say, stat sheet aside, if you watch the games, in terms of matching up with this Big Ten physicality. And Penn State's going to look to bring the same, attraction here with their 2 great running backs and offensive line that's been thriving on the interior. So I think for USC, I think they're doing a pretty good job kind of meeting expectations because, again, they were just getting smoked by everyone last year, proving they can play in this conference, and this is a good opportunity for them to continue to prove that statement.
This is a good opportunity to stand up and prove a little bit here. Mohammed, 12 total tackles, a half tackle for loss for him. He's been good. Anthony Lucas, 10 total tackles. Meyer, 10 total tackles plus 3 pass breakups for him. Shelby, 9 total tackles plus a sack. Clifton, 8 total tackles and a pass breakup. Kobe Pope has 8 total tackles, or Kobe Pepe, that is, has 8 total tackles in rotational. So this is a unit that's getting better. Anthony Lucas has been solid. I think I do like what I've seen out of him so far this season. Meyer, you plugged him in. He's been successful. This unit's getting better as time goes on. I think it's a unit that's going to continue to improve as the season goes on. Facing their toughest test yet, obviously, with 2 backs in Singleton and Allen that are incredible. This is a big matchup. Can they try and soften the blow from those 2 backs that have had really strong seasons so far?
You look at their middle of their defense, Mason Cobb, Easton Mascarenas, Arnold. Cobb's a guy that plays with a lot of energy, can bring some heat in the backfield for you. Mascarenas Arnold's kind of been a bit of a disappointment in terms of his run-stopping abilities and not being a consistent tackler. Eric Gentry, on the other hand, you're hoping to have him back for this game. He's a big loss if he doesn't play because he's been an elite run defender this year, has great length and coverage. Trying to match up with Tyler Warren is going to be important. He's a guy that has really impressed in this new coaching staff because he's a former high-end talent of his own. Really struggled until now because he's getting the correct coaching. This linebacking group's performance really is going to come down to if Gentry plays or not, Nick. I think they have abilities to make plays in the backfield, and again, they're more improved than they were last year in terms of positioning. Certainly not perfect. Gentry has to play, though, or they're going to probably struggle against the run.
Top 3 tacklers on this team are all linebackers. All 3 of them are having solid seasons. Easton Mascarenas Arnold has been really solid so far for this team. He's been really good top tackler, 36 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a pick for him. I like what I've seen out of him. He's plugged in easily. Gentry, when he's playing fully healthy, 30 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, plus a pass breakup and a forced fumble he recovered. Good numbers there. Mason Cobb, 25 total tackles, 2 picks, including 1 he took to the house, and 1.5 tackles for loss. These 3, the heartbeat of the defense, these guys have to have good days. All 3 of them got to play full levels to have a potential to win this game. I think Gentry's going to play. I think he's going to have a big day and helping to stop that run, and that's a big key to me for this defensive side of the ball.
And you look at the secondary for USC, a group that has also been a very exciting unit, probably the most exciting one on this team in terms of improvement. Jacoby Covington and Jalen Smith were 2 guys that were on the roster last year, and they've showcased phenomenal improvements. They're better tacklers, they're better in run defense as well. John Humphrey's been solid in coverage when he's been on the field. You look at the slot position, Greedy Vance, he's been a tremendous addition, has not cracked one bit in coverage. He's probably the best defensive back at this point. Kamari Ramsey at safety. He's missed a lot of tackles, but he's been elite in coverage. Akil Arnold also kind of struggling in that tackle category. This is a Penn State offense that's not exactly built on big passing plays in terms of their presence, but yards after catch, they're going to have opportunities for that. And a few of these SC defensive backs have missed an abundance of tackles. Nowhere near as many as last year where they just had no clue what they were doing. The fundamentals are certainly much better. That discipline's also better. But that's where Penn State's going to look to strike, Nick, because there's a lot of times when you're watching their games and they turn in small gains into much bigger plays because of poor tackling. I think that's an area that SC might be exposed in, but in terms of overall coverage, I don't expect them to be rattled too often.
I don't expect them to be rattled too often either. I think they'll have a solid day and hold up strong here. Tackling's been better this year, which I think is a key point, but still needs a lot of improvement. Arnold, 21 total tackles for him, a half sack plus 1 pass breakup. Ramsey has been good, 20 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, 1 pass breakup, 2 forced fumbles. He's been really solid, hard hitting. Jalen Smith, 18 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Covington, 17 total tackles, a tackle for loss, plus 2 pass breakups. Greedy Vance has been really good in coverage, a solid asset, 11 total tackles, plus a pass breakup, and John Humphrey has 6 total tackles as well. I like the secondary. I think it's getting better as the season goes on. This is a good unit here, facing a tough test in Drew Allure, who's a really good quarterback. They can isolate that, pick on him a little bit, maybe get an interception, look strong in coverage, play strong against some of these weaker wide receivers, cut down his tight end option because he loves throwing to his tight end, make sure the tight end is covered, and keep an eye on that. You could have some success in the secondary.
Looking at the team comparisons, tail of the tape, at quarterback and receiver, I think SC has an advantage there. Everywhere else, not so much, especially in the trenches at linebacker and defensive back, and I'd say it's a pretty clear edge in most of these spots for Penn State, including a 1-2 punch at running back that's one of the best in the country. What do you feel about this, Nick? I'd say this is something you're probably going to agree with.
I think you can give linebacker potentially to USC. I think there's a case if Gentry's playing at full strength, he's a really talented piece. I think the 3 linebackers there are really good. I've been a little iffy on the Penn State linebacking core. I think it's a good unit. I think you could potentially give that to USC. The only thing I disagree with, the rest of this makes a lot of sense to me. I like what I've seen out of the quarterback play and the wide receiving play for USC. The running back room, O-line are very dominant for Penn State, and the secondary defensive line are really strong units. The rest of that makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm going to go to the final thoughts in the prediction. Keys to the game, I think for Penn State, bring the heat up front versus a weak 0-1, and the run game also needs to get going. For USC, provide some protection for once, contain the big plays in the run game. As an SC fan, no prediction for me, but Nick, you're going with the upset, and this is kind of reminiscent of many years back when they had Ed Orgeron, a top 5 Stanford team, came to town and SC upset them. And Lincoln Riley here needs a big win, and this team's not been bad. They've lost on 4th and goal in both games on the road in Big Ten environments that nobody thought they could probably compete in, Nick, and it's come down to literally the final second of the game, and that's where they've lost those 2 contests. And, I think for USC, it would be a great momentum builder. For some reason, they fell out of the rankings. Probably shouldn't have happened, but a win here will put you right back into the top 15 and potentially an opportunity to still make a run at the CFP. You're going with the upset, though. I don't think it's that far-fetched because I think with this Penn State offense and, of course, the defensive backs against this USC passing attack and Lincoln Riley's creativity, the D-line's not going to have as many opportunities to feast. So I think the Trojans winning is a pretty respectable upset, but as a fan, Nick, certainly a little disappointed in some of these results. Got to be able to close games.
Rolling the dice here a little bit and taking USC at home in this one. I think this is a big matchup. Penn State, I just haven't been sold on them yet. They struggled against Illinois in a game that a lot of us felt they would struggle in. They looked better against UCLA, but they've struggled against Bowling Green as well this year. I've been not fully sold on Drew Allure at times. I've not been sold on the wide receiving room. I think the secondary has some iffy pieces. I think if you can establish the run game for USC and contain Penn State's run game with those linebackers, you will win this game. If you're the Trojans, I think they can do that. They had some success against Michigan at times, and they looked good against Wisconsin in a win. I think the game plan is similar to what you saw against Wisconsin and Michigan. I know they lost to Minnesota. Did not have a great day in that matchup. I think that certainly was a bad loss, but this is a team that I still think has a nice pathway forward given the schedule in front of them and given their opportunities. I like them to bounce back here, get a nice win, put one back in the win column, and upset. We've seen a lot of top teams go down this year, very similar to 2007, where a lot of top teams kept going down over and over again, and I think that this is an opportunity for Penn State to fall to victim of that and fall to a letdown situation here. This is a Penn State team that's been playing well, but not good enough in my opinion. They're still not proving to me that they're one of the top 5 teams in the country. I'm still shaky on them. I think they're going to get a rude awakening here and lose this game to USC. I've been high on USC, slightly disappointed, but also been pleased with some of their wins against LSU and Wisconsin. I think it's a big opportunity to pick up another big win as long as they can establish the run game, give Miller Moss some time to throw the ball, and then also slow down and stuff the run from Penn State, make Allure a little uncomfortable and make him do some things that he doesn't want to do, open up the playbook a little bit, make them struggle on the ground. I like the Trojans in this one. I think they'll get the job done in a lower scoring affair and put up a big win for Lincoln Riley and company.
Yeah, I certainly think if USC just gets blown out in this game, Penn State's not going to get the credit for it. So it seems like kind of a lose-lose situation, because you just talked about this is an opportunity for them to get exposed. And obviously they would get a lot of hate for losing, but they're not probably going to get much if they win either. Do you think that's an accurate sentiment?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair assessment, because this is a team that a lot of people, if Penn State goes out there and wins this game by 15, 20, people are like, oh, well, USC's bad. They lost to Minnesota. They didn't look good against Michigan at times. Whereas if they lose this game, that's going to be a bad look for them, considering that they're a top 5 team that ended up going down. Definitely a lose-lose situation, a tough one for Penn State fans. They obviously want to go win this one big, but I think they don't get a whole lot of credit either way. Definitely a tough position. I feel like USC is kind of playing with house money here. If they lose this game, people will be like, oh, well, we're over-expecting them. And honestly, I said it earlier in the episode, this is a USC team under Lincoln Riley that's kind of transitioning. They're changing some of the philosophy, trying to run the ball a little bit more, trying to improve and build better fundamentals on defense. So this team didn't have high expectations this season. So USC is kind of playing with house money here. They can go in and shock college football and beat a top 5 team and make a big statement for Lincoln Riley.
Two coaches that have also been catching a lot of heat. So big time opportunity for somebody to step out on Saturday in LA. It's going to be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. A really cool Big Ten matchup going down in LA.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.